What is good, guys? It's Ronald Cabang, also known as UCapper from SportsMemo.com. This is the MLB Full Count Show, powered by Sports Memo. It is Tuesday, August the 23rd. You know what Tuesday is? It's $2 Tuesday. We got three handicappers here with 5% plays to give out. You can get all three of these best bets for $5 versus the retail price of 105. That's a big, huge discount there. Or you can get them separately for just $2 each. But you can't get a better deal than that anywhere else other than Sports Memo. Eric Polly, 5% MLB play of the week. Kevin Thomas, 5% NFL Thursdays main event, and the Ross Benjamin 5% NFL preseason play, all available on sportsmemo.com for the $2 Tuesday, or like I said, the triple play for just $5. With that said, we got a couple guys here who had a good time in Las Vegas here on the panel with me. Jeff Michaels and Dr. Chuck. I am so sad that I missed you guys. I wasn't able to be out there, but I saw pictures. I saw you guys had a lot of fun out there. How was your experience there, Dr. Chuck? I know this is your first meet and greet.
Oh, yeah, it was great. Yeah. And, I did the golf side of it, but I got to hear more about, Tony Mejia not being able to walk for the rest of the weekend. So I got both ends of it, with Merrill's kids dominating the basketball court. I think I was glad I was out on the golf course.
Yeah. How about you, Jeff? I think I saw you on the basketball court there.
Yeah, I was going to say sorry. If Tony's watching, I think I have to say sorry to Tony, because I may have been on the other end of that he can't walk thing from what I've heard. So, yeah. And we're on the same team. How about that one?
What did you do?
Hey, I didn't think Tony was going to get this loose ball, and he got there a lot quicker than I thought he did. So we ended up in the stands, and I ended up going over. Yeah, so that was fun. No, but it was exciting. It was an awesome turnout. We had guys outside of Wager Talk guys coming to the basketball thing too, and I heard there were a couple that showed up for the golf thing too. So great turnout from inside and outside the company, and meeting some faces for the first time and seeing some familiar faces again is always nice. So yeah, can't complain about the weekend.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Hopefully I can make the next one. But with that said, we got some MLB games to break down today. First up, the Rangers versus the Rockies. We got the righty Dane Dunning versus the righty Herman Marquez. Dunning has been struggling on the road here. Does that continue here with his struggles on the road? What do you think, Dr. Chuck? How are you looking at this one?
Well, yeah. So you brought it up that Dane Dunning's a hard guy to back, obviously, and Herman Marquez is the guy that I am very back and forth with. Most of the time I shoot for a fade here. The way that I was looking at this, as far as specifically attacking, the way this goes, my clients know we were big on the Twins yesterday and swallowed the run line because you got plus money, and they couldn't do anything, which is what they kind of do when they back us. The Rangers got that win 2-1. And now they go to Colorado, where it's always an interesting thing to go from a different stadium, not your home, to then show up in Coors Field. The VMI is actually pretty excellent here against Herman Marquez's four-seamer. So if I had to go after it, I would. They're almost a plus 20 VMI, which basically means that fastball, Marquez isn't real great with it anyway. It's going to kind of look like a beach ball, but it depends on whether or not that rears its head better for them in the second game. I often attack it most of the series, but I've noticed it being a little less lucrative right off the bat. They're going to have a similar visual memory index tomorrow when they face the Rockies again in Coors. So that might be the best spot to get them. But I wouldn't want to be on any kind of Rangers under or any kind of maybe full game under with Dane Dunning pitching either. So at 10.5, it's a little head scratching. Maybe why is it not 11? And so that makes me think that I would want to do a little more seeing where that money's going. If it's maybe a begging for an overplay, and that would lean me towards an under, fade the beg type situation. But yeah, with Dane Dunning, it's really tricky. I would normally fade Marquez with a VMI for the opposing lineup against him like this. So it's pretty much going to be a pass at this point, but I would wait and see. If that drops to 10, I'm going to be on the over.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I know I just talked about Dane Dunning's struggle on the road just 1-10 on the road straight up, but his last 3 games he's been pretty solid. Jeff, what are you thinking about this one? Is he turning the corner here, or do we want to fade him still on the road?
I don't know if turning the corner would be the right phrase, because I think that implies continuing on. But he has had, a pretty good last 3 starts. He's got a 2.60 ERA, and the team's won all 3 of those starts. But like you said, they're just 1-10 in his 11 road starts this year. And I actually did look. I was curious about a 10.5 run total in Coors. So I did look, and before I looked deeper into the pitchers, I was looking at the trends on the total because the 10.5 caught my eye. Rangers and Rockies have gone under in 10 of the 13 games that they've played in the last 3 years. And both teams have struggled to put up runs coming off a game like yesterday. Both of them had close losses, and Colorado's just 6-18 over under off a loss by 2 or less runs. And Texas has gone under in 4 straight games. They're 1-6-1 over under in the last 8, and they're just 3-11 over under after a game that had 3 or less combined runs. So there's something to be said about both these teams. Obviously, runs can always be put up in Colorado, but even with Dunning and even with Marquez, Marquez is 4-0 to the under in his 4 career starts against Texas too. And both of them have an ERA under 4 against the opposition. So Dunning's got a halfway decent ERA against Colorado, and Marquez has an ERA under 3 against Texas. So, I do not very often I go into Colorado and take an under, especially looking at the pitching matchups. But the way these two teams have played and the way that they're coming off the game, the trends that they're coming off of their previous game, I actually do like the under in this one for the full game. I don't think I would touch it on the first 5 with these 2 starters, but going the full game, I do think that there's a pretty good shot that they stay under this 10.5 tonight in Colorado. So,
and I don't
Go
know
ahead,
if
Jeff.
I do this
Go
right,
ahead,
but I
Dr.
just want to add one more thing to exactly what Jeff brought up, and we don't often go off of the things like this, and Ron might have the numbers in front of him because I don't, but I'm very intrigued. For guys that do, and I don't know if Jeff or Ron, either of you delve into full day stuff, Grand Salami, things like that. But I mean, when you win a Grand Salami the way that it was yesterday, there weren't even 40 runs scored in Major League Baseball yesterday. I'm interested. It was also kind of a travel day for some of the teams. Not all the umpires are out there now. Interesting weather across the country. I mean, I'm looking at it now, 9 games, 38 runs. Is there precedent? What's the next day? What happens on the next day with that, Ron? Do you have those numbers? I don't know.
No, I don't have those numbers, but I mean, it could just be a coincidence. Those one-off type of situations, especially with a small slate like that. Weird things happen. Going back to what Jeff said about the under, especially on the Colorado Rockies. Go ahead. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, like he said, I would. Why do they want us to bet the over? Why do they want so badly for us to bet the over? I stay away if they want it that bad.
Yeah, this is one of those tricky situations, right? You see Coors Field, and you always see runs there, or typically you think runs there, but you see both of these teams really struggling in their spots against righties. Rangers struggle against righties on the road, and then the Rockies also, they've been struggling recently against righties at home. So I definitely can't talk you guys off of that under there. That might be one way to look at it. With that said, we got our second game here, the Marlins and the A's. And, we talk about runs, and sometimes, when we look at Marlins and A's, we talk about no runs. We got righty Pablo Lopez and lefty Zach Logue. How are you guys looking at this one? This one's a total of 7. After seeing a Rockies game at 10.5, it seems like total opposite games here. But let's start with Jeff on this one. What are you thinking about this game?
Yeah, this is another odd pitching matchup, I guess, to say the least. Pablo Lopez, you talk about through his first, 12 starts. He was in, debate for all the pitching awards in the book coming out of it. And now that he's split he's made 24 starts now, and the team's 12-12 in those starts. But they are coming off a shutout win yesterday against Oakland. And Lopez brings a 6.06 ERA in his 3 interleague starts. So they're just 4-16 after allowing 1 or less run this year. And they're 12-25 after allowing 2 or less runs. I don't know if I can back an Oakland team at home, especially with Log on the mound. He's 2-7 in his 9 starts this year with a 6.55 ERA. And in his last 3, he's got an ERA of 8.62. And 2 of those 3 games were against Texas and Detroit. Third one was against Houston. So you got some pretty good competition there. But, you know, an 8.62 ERA when 2 of your starts are Houston and Texas and Detroit is not something to go home and call home about. But you know, obviously you talk Oakland at home, they're 19-41 this year, but I broke it down a little bit more. You look at the teams that they're playing, they're 9-26 at home against teams under 500. They're just 2-12 against teams that have a win percentage between 38 and 46%. They're 6-18 when the money line's between plus and minus 125, and they're 8-24 at home, revenging a loss where they put up 1 or less run. And every single one of those splits, they're losing by at least 2 runs per game. So they're losing, some of those they're losing by 2.5, almost 3 runs. So not to mention a 2-8 interleague record for Oakland. So even at 7, the way Lopez has been pitching, I might be looking the under. Miami's put up just 2.9 runs in games started by lefties, and they're hitting 214 in those games. They're hitting 196 as a team in the last 7, and they're hitting 199 in interleague play. So Miami's struggling to get the bat on the ball, putting up 2.9 runs in those games started by lefties too. So if I'm looking at anything on this one, I'm probably looking the under here.
Yeah, I like that look a lot, actually. I mean, if you look at a surface level, we're seeing Lopez and Logue both struggling in the last 3 games each, 0-3, both of those guys. And Pablo Lopez ERA in those last 3, 7.04. Like you mentioned, Logue is 8.62 ERA in those last 3. So from a surface level, it's kind of like, oh, this should be an obvious over game. But you see the bats of both of these teams struggling to put runs on the board. What do you think about that type of mixed signals, Dr. Chuck, and how are you looking at this game?
Yeah, it's difficult to parse out how you're going to decide who has the edge, if it's going to be the starters or the lineup. And I almost always, at least 9 out of 10 times, I'm going to side with the starter, even if they're struggling, because they still have the advantage. That they have more ability to fool the hitter. They have it's the hardest thing to do in all of sports. It's like the oldest thing Tony Gwynn said, is to hit a round ball with a round bat. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, yes, Jeff brought it up. Pablo Lopez is a guy that I love to back. I always talk about the Marlins starting rotation, and he definitely should have been a guy teams wanted by the time the trade deadline came around, but he just wasn't performing and ended up sticking around in South Beach. And since the All-Star break, the Marlins are 1-5 straight up with him on the mound and 1-5 against the run line. And even in the win, they only beat the Reds 2-1. And they're averaging giving up 6 runs in those games. They're averaging scoring 2. He's not performing, nor is he getting any run support. And so, I mean, in those 6 games, they've only scored 11 runs. And so, I mean, it's hard to imagine taking an over here, no matter what Zach Logue looked like, no matter what the A's are. I mean, these are 2 teams. It's done. Not there with the expanded playoff format. There's not a lot of teams that are just done, but they're done. I was big on the Marlins yesterday with Eddie Cabrera on the mound, and Adam Oller has overperformed, and it's hard to want to take an over in this game, period. It's even harder when the previous game was 3-0 and the A's couldn't do anything. My best bet later will be a little antithesis of that, but more just individual based. But absolutely, I mean, Jeff brought it up. It's not something I'm going to just spurt out right now because it may be something that clients already have. But I mean, there's pretty solid system to a total hung like this in an interleague game. And so, yeah, I would not be on the over.
Makes sense to me. I could kind of see where you're going with it as far as like where your best bet might be going. Definitely agree with both of you guys' angles here. With that said, we got one more game to talk about, and this one is going to be a Brewers-Dodgers game, and this is, we talk about a pitcher's duel. This is one for the books here. Righty Corbin Burns, righty Tony Gonsolin, both very strong pitchers, in my opinion. Dr. Chuck, is this where we see, you just talked about, looking at the pitchers as more of the catalyst when looking at a total. Is this something with the same aspect, right? Two strong pitchers. Are you looking towards the under, or how are you looking at this one?
Yeah. So it's what we went 3 for 3 as far as Dr. Chuck would go, as you couldn't get me on the over no matter what you're going to tell me to do. Maybe this would be more of a first 5 type baiting situation, because this feels like a pitching matchup that would have a 6.5. And so it has me scratching my head a little bit. The books aren't afraid to put those sub-7 numbers out there. And so I'm a little interested. Stat popped up this morning that I noticed that wasn't something that I was innately aware of, but the Dodgers were shut out last night for the first time at home on the season. And so that's an interesting aspect, considering that their ace is on the mound the next day. I have still not been able to figure out how Gonsolin is doing this with the smoke and mirrors. His metrics don't quite match up to his newspaper numbers, and I am never going to back newspaper numbers if they can't match up. Corbin Burnes, maybe he isn't following up the Cy Young with another slam dunk Cy Young, but that's more because of Sandy and less because of him. And so I just can't fathom. I can't fathom wanting to pick a side on this, because I would just feel awful if I pick a side and, Corbin Burnes pitches his ass off and then they blow it at the end, no longer having Hader and things like that. Following that 4-0 game, I would probably play the under 5 here.
You going with the alternate total here?
I mean,
yeah, I can see where you're coming from. Obviously, we've seen Burnes and Gonsolin, two very, very dominant pitchers, right? Both ERAs under 2.5. On Gonsolin's side at 2.
And the only thing to follow up that with, I was watching MLB tonight, and they were joking 2 years ago, we're talking 2 seasons ago, Cody Bellinger and Christian Yelich were just unstoppable brute forces at the top of Major League Baseball.
That's
and
so
now
crazy.
they hit themselves out of a wet paper bag. And it's an interesting situation that, what is the deal across baseball? And so I further, if those two guys, and Cody Bellinger's not the most important part of the Dodgers, but I mean, it's off of a shutout. It's just, it's hard to imagine thinking that there's 8 runs in this game.
Yeah, it's just crazy to hear both of those names and then see where they're at currently, right now in the MLB. But what I was mentioning is, you were talking about, thinking that the total would be at 6.5. One thing that I was looking at this morning that probably pushed this to the over is how well the Brewers and Dodgers hit against righties in their specific spots. I don't know if you're going to dive into that, Jeff, but that's what I was seeing. Maybe that's why the total's at 7. What are your takes on this one?
Yeah, the one thing that I found was the fact that the Dodgers don't do it twice in a row. I think that's got something to do with it too. Some of the things I like the Dodgers here. I'm slightly hesitant that not to the point that I would just solely because of Corbin Burnes pretty much. I mean, both of these starting pitchers have an ERA under 2.5. And both of them have an ERA under 2 on their respective sites for tonight, Corbin Burnes being on the road and Gonsolin being at home. I mean, Gonsolin's got a 1.53 ERA at home this year. They're 2 perfect trends for the Dodgers that I found actually for today's game too. With Gonsolin on the mound this season, they're a perfect 10-0 coming off a team loss. And they're a perfect 11-0 this season at home at night against right-handed pitchers, surprisingly enough, on teams over 500. When the line -1 outlier game that they lost as a -280 favorite. So if you take the line under or bigger than -280, then you're looking at 11-0, 11-0 on the run line, 11-0 on the money line, and winning by over 4 runs per game, putting up nearly 7 and allowing under 3. But I wouldn't put a bet out on the total, but I'll tell you that I think that's why, you get a team that's shut out like that with those names that you mentioned. It's like the Yankees. You see the Yankees get shut out and we're all over the next day. Well, okay, maybe not this month, but prior to August, you're all over it after they can't put up runs. And, I like the Dodgers with Gonsolin on the mound again tonight. So Brewers shut them out yesterday. I don't think they can do it again today. And I think it's going to take a couple runs for them, which is going to be hard to put up on Gonsolin at home in Dodger Stadium. So I like the Dodgers in this one, actually.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I was looking at that same trend that you just brought up, the Gonsolin after a loss, 10-0 straight up, 8-2 on the run line as well. If you want to look towards the run line, because I know at minus 150, it's kind of a steep price for some people, but I can't talk anyone off of that run line. And as well, like you mentioned, after getting shut out this season, 4-1 straight up, 4-1 on the run line for the Dodgers. So that's the way that I would look towards too. I can't talk anyone off, even the run line here, regardless of who's pitching on the other side.
And it does look too, even you look in the last 3 games, obviously the Dodgers haven't had the offense that maybe they put up at the beginning of the year. But just looking at the last 3 games, yesterday they got shut out, 0 runs on the board. They put up 17 combined runs in the 2 games prior to that, a seven run and a 10 spot in the 2 games before. So, putting up 17 runs to come back and not be able to put a run in 9 innings, I don't see them being able to do that again.
Yeah, and that's a good point to the chat here, Raven Ron. I hope Dodgers aren't following the Yankees trend, hot then lose for a while. I mean, that's something that we don't want to see, especially if we're looking at the Dodgers in this game. One other thing to add here as well is the Dodgers 6-0 on the full game under in non-divisional home games when Gonsolin starts. So I look towards the under there, and it's weird to be on a run line and an under, but you could definitely see like a 3-1 type game or 3-0 or whatever it might be, especially when you're looking at the Dodgers here. So that those are some great angles and analytics that you guys brought up in these games here today. We went through 3 games, 3 strong games. I feel like the only one that we really didn't have a great look at was that first game, Rangers and Rockies. But Marlins, A's, Brewers, and Dodgers, I feel like we had pretty good angles on it. With that said, we got the best bets coming up. Jeff Michaels, we could start with you here. I know I can hear it in your voice that the weekend has taken a toll on you.
Fun.
So we'll get you out of the way here. Talk about what you got on the premium side, and then talk about your best bet for the show today.
I woke up after the first day. We hadn't even done anything yet, and it had already started.
Oh,
and they're like, "What'd you do yesterday?" And I'm like, "I didn't actually do anything." But yeah, you can obviously tell, things have changed in the last weekend, apparently. But my best bet today, guys, I like this St. Louis game in game 2 tonight. Game 1, I believe, went off right before the video or during the video, but I usually am not a fan of looking at double headers, to be honest, but St. Louis, I saw it at minus 125. I think at minus 130 was maybe where we ended up. But at that point, against a Cubs team, I mean, St. Louis start at the fact they're 16-3 in the month of August, and they've won 8 in a row against a Cubs team. That should be all you need to say at minus 125. But they're 49-17, the Cardinals are, as a favorite of minus 110 or higher this year. They're winning by almost 2.5 runs. They're 19-6 when they're a favorite of that caliber on the road, winning by a little more even. And they're 31-17 against the division this year. That's a 64.6 win percentage. That's 4th best in the majors, behind Houston, the Mets, and the Dodgers. Not the Yankees, and they've won 5 out of the last 6 games against Chicago and 8 out of the last 12 that they've played in the last 3 years. Woodford's making his first start this year, but you look back to his starts last year, St. Louis has won 4 out of his last 5 outings, and you have Adrian Sampson on the mound for the Cubs. I mean, he hasn't pitched horrible, but there's not a whole lot of support coming from this Cubs team. And I thought it was crazy that Adrian Sampson, he's not made, a crazy amount of starts, but he started his career in the MLB in 2016. He's won his last 2 starts. Never in his career has the team walked away with a win in 3 consecutive of his outings. So tonight puts that to the test again. And this Cubs team hasn't won a game in the second half of the year at home against what my site considers a good team, which is 54-62% winning percentage. They're 0-13 since the start of the second half of the season. So I don't care if it's a doubleheader. I'm liking this Cardinals line against the Cubs here tonight.
I love it. I love that look a lot. What do you think about as far as the Cardinals here? You talked about not playing double headers here. Sometimes people talk about just a quick question back to you is
Yeah.
do you ever look at the outcome of the first game prior to betting the second game of a doubleheader? Or
Yeah.
does that not matter at all?
I mean it does. To me, I think it is a little hard to give out an opinion on something like that, because just for this game, for example, I believe game 2, this isn't a true double header, I guess, so it's not back to back. There's a split between them. But when you're talking a true double header, there it's hard to get the time, to get it out there in time to get it to people when you're waiting on the result of the first game and you got 40 minutes to get to the second. So absolutely, if I'm thinking in my head, if I'm thinking personally, and obviously it does impact my decision to some extent, but I don't think there's any scenario that this St. Louis team should only be minus 125 against the Cubs. So that's why I am not holding out for the first game. That doesn't totally
I get
my
it.
opinion today.
Yeah,
But
I mean the good thing about it is that you already know who the starting pitchers are, and primarily that's what we focus on when we cap these games. So that I love that answer a lot. I mean, and if you look at the Cubs here and just their current form, it's really in almost, I wouldn't say an easy decision, but it makes it easier when you kind of know how a team is doing currently. Um, so yeah, I love that answer a lot, Dr. Chuck. What is your best bet of today, and then talk about what you got going on the premium side as well.
Yeah, so my best bet, I'm going to go back to one of the games that we talked about here. But before we get to the best bet, we have tennis all day long. There's 2 WTA tournaments and an ATP tournament this week, PGA again. We have baseball right now. So without going full on Bronx Tale mush here, we have the first 5 under. It's 1-0 Cubs. I think, to Jeff and Ron's point before we get into my play, I think blanket, just SDQL wise, I think it's a fallacy that the team's always split. And I think Jeff's right to just look at it from an individual basis, especially if it's a day night. I can't imagine that you would want to just automatically, if the Cubs do pull this off, it's not automatically Cardinals, and if the Cardinals win, it's not automatically Cubs. I would not want to be on that side. But yeah, as far as these 3 games we talked about, a lot of expectation of no runs. But I'm looking at something that I rarely do, especially as far as the free plays. I don't not give out props. But if you're looking just at the last 7 days of baseball, and I'm really big into analytics and metrics, probably annoyingly so for viewers out there, but if you're looking at just the last 7 days, as far as the top metrics, weighted on base average, ISO and weighted runs corrected plus, and WAR, there's some guys at the top of the list of the WAR that you're going to expect. Goldie is up there, Ohtani, Jose Abreu, a lot of MVPs, Alex Bregman. But guess who has the most WAR in the last 7 days? It's Sean Murphy, the catcher for the Oakland Athletics. He bats in the 3rd hole. He gets Pablo Lopez tonight. My two colleagues here brought up all the Pablo detriments as far as his numbers go. I only talked about how the Marlins are, not supporting him with runs and how they just lose when he starts. But you only have to – it's just the benefit of the books and knowing who they favor, and that, guys do want to get more action and get more props and MLB props, and it's every day, and you can play so many games. And guys like Sean Murphy are going to be undervalued no matter what. This is just pretty decent offshore at like minus 139, minus 140. But like I said, this guy, his ISO is north of 400, which a good number there is like 200. So he's twice that. That's power. Pablo Lopez just hasn't been solid. This is a combination prop here, hits, runs, and RBIs. He needs 2 total on his whole line score tonight. And like I said, he's in the 3 hole. He'll bat as quick as the first inning and should have at least 4 at-bats. I mean, something terrible would have to happen for him not to have 4 at-bats. He should have a 5th at-bat at least. And it's just, the value on this is just too good to get a guy that people probably have no idea is actually the best hitter over the last 7-day period. And he plays for the Oakland Athletics. And I just like the value. And I thought it was one of the best things that you could find on the board tonight.
Awesome. Yeah, we don't see player props here too often, at least for when I'm on the show. So it's cool to see that aspect of it. Just to add on to what you mentioned also when you first started talking about the doubleheader, that's the reason why I asked you guys that question, is because I know a lot of the viewers kind of see it where, oh, I'm just gonna bet the opposite of what happened in the first game. That's not how you really want to do it. So I'm glad that you guys answered that in that fashion. For me, my best bet, I'm going back to one of the games that we talked about earlier, the Rangers Rockies. I know you guys didn't have a clear vision on how you guys seen this game, but for me, really, I'm just going back to fading Dane Dunning here. 1-10 on the road. He struggles in those spots specifically. And I think for me, for people who's followed me, I've been on that trend for a while now. I know he's 3-0 in his last 2.6 ERA, but I think that we go back to how he is normally on the road, 1-10 straight up, 5.08 ERA here. I'm gonna trust both teams here to struggle offensively. I agree with your guys' look towards the under to some extent, but I do believe that the Rockies, being in familiar territory at home in Coors Field, gives them the edge here. So I'm gonna look at the Rockies on the money line. That's the way that I'm gonna go here. I think typically if you want to fade the Rangers, you're getting them at a pretty chalky price, like -150, -160. But if you get them here on the opposite side at -110, -115, where I'm seeing it at, then I think that's a really good price to take the opponent on a Rangers game, especially when they're coming off of a win as well. So that's the way that I'm going here. From a premium side, I do like I do have 4 MLB plays already posted. One game is a best bet that is available for sale for $10 on the Sports Memo website, and I also have a 4-pack preseason preseason package available as well. I'm 3-1. I believe a 3-1 or 4-1 on the NFL preseason so far this season. So far this preseason, and hopefully the next 4 we just win it outright. I believe that's one way that I want to look at going into the NFL season. Pretty strong here to get some cash to help us go through the regular season. So that's my premium bets. Going back to having Jeff and Dr. Chuck back with me. I always we've been rocking together the last few shows, and I always have fun with you guys. And I appreciate you guys being on here with me because we have a good vibe, a good chemistry together. So hopefully we do these more often. With that said, one last thing is the $2 Tuesday. Remember, it's $2 Tuesday at sportsmemo.com. 5-unit plays, 3 5-unit plays available for $5, or get them separately for $2. Eric Pauly, Ross Benjamin, and Kevin Thomas. Guys, this is the end of the show. Hopefully we cash all together with our best bets. Good luck with all your action.